Okay, should I go for a new flat, or should I go for a ready to move in flat, or should I go for a flat which is already owned by somebody else which I like?
In almost 90% of cases, ready to move in houses are undoubtedly the best option. Why is this so? And which are the 10% cases where under construction comes out as a clear winner? Hi, I'm Samarth Tandon, Investments Lead at Wintwealth.
And I'm Nishant, Chief Compliance and Legal Officer at Wintwealth. One of the biggest advantages of ready to move in flats over under construction properties is transparency. What I mean by that is in ready to move in flats, what you see is exactly what you get.
So I can easily say that last 3 to 4 years I've been doing window shopping of where to buy a house in Bangalore, which kind of house to buy. So we prefer ready to move in. The direct advantage which I see with ready to move in is that the flat is ready. We have been reading and hearing so many rumors, and there is a lot of delays that happen. Sometimes the even flat people don't get possession of their flat. So to avoid all that and having a very good peace of mind, we thought, okay, ready to move in is good. And when you see the model houses, all the pictures the builders they show a very rosy pictures. Like around they will not show how the property is looking. If nearby there is a garbage dump, they will not show you that in the model houses. So it's very difficult to actually visualize, okay, in 16th floor or in 10th floor, what your house is going to be, what kind of view you're going to get. In ready to move in property, at least that part is sorted out.
Usually, under construction properties in most of the tier 1 cities are typically 10 to 12% cheaper than ready to move in houses. But this trend has changed since the pandemic. Over the past 2 years, the price gap between the two has reduced to as low as 3 to 5% only. Because the demand for the flats decreased so much during the pandemic, the builders have huge backlog of unsold flats. Now suppose if I want to buy a flat, why would I buy a 2-3 year old flat which is ready to move in when I can get a new flat for the same price? So the sellers have no option but to sell these flats at lower rates, which from a buyer's perspective is a great deal.
So apart from cost of the house, if you're buying a resale property, you have to think about the registration cost, and then there is a TDS charges also. So resale is less complicated, I will say, because the people who ask for the pricing, it's an upfront cost. There is no hidden charges there. If you buy a house which is ready, the registration is not yet done. So there will be a lot of investors who will invest in big properties. And then once the builder will approach them for registration, they would tend to sell those houses. And if those are investors, you tend to get a better rates also. So the sweet spot is to approach at that time.
Now that we see that the price advantage has reduced considerably, why would anyone buy an under construction property?
An under construction property will give you some time to plan your finances until you get possession of that property.
So the ideal property, there will be a EMI of 80,000. Right now I am not able to afford 80,000 EMI. I'm okay with under development, and in coming 2-3 years I am able to fill the gap without compromising my lifestyle.
Another major advantage is that in this you have a little room for customization. Say for example, you are particular about Vastu, or that you want sunlight or ventilation to be in a particular way. Now, this customization might come at a slight premium, but if you're getting exactly what you want, the payoff might be worth it.
But when you go for a new construction, then there are a lot of charges which sometimes are under the sheets. Nowadays, if you reach out to the top builders, they will upfront share with you saying that this is the basic cost of the property, and then the other things like clubhouse charges, parking charges. Sometimes they will say premium charges, like where the sun is coming into the balcony, they will charge extra for that. If it's a corner house, they'll charge extra for that. The more a higher floor you go, you have to pay premium for that.
In a ready to move in flat, all these costs you will have to pay in a short span of time, probably within a few weeks. But in an under construction property, the costs spread over a few years.
Of course, there are a few other costs involved in both the cases, which we'll get to later in the video. But according to me, one of the major disadvantages of under construction flats is the waiting period.
If the difference between the booking time and the possession time is close to 2 years, you will have to live somewhere for that period. And when you will have to live somewhere, you will have to end up paying rent. Assume that the rent you are paying is around 30,000 per month. When you add all of that, it roughly comes to 10 to 15% of the base price of the house you're buying. And that is not all. Your EMIs will also add up. That means you will have to pay more interest to the bank. When you buy a ready to move in property, the process is pretty much straightforward. and the EMIs kick in the moment registration gets completed. But loans for under construction properties are a bit different and have three options. Option 1, you can start the payment of your EMI after possession. Option 2, you can start the payment of pre-EMI till possession. Option 3, which is the best in my opinion, that you can start the payment of complete EMI from the date of disbursement. In first option, you don't pay anything till possession. In second option, you only pay interest till possession. And thereafter, the principal component kicks in along with interest. In the third option, both principal and interest payment is being made from the date of disbursement. Out of the three options, for the entire loan tenure, you end up paying the least amount of interest in option 3. Tax on your purchase also differs depending on which kind of property you are buying. If you're buying a ready to move in flat, then you do not have to worry about GST at all because it does not apply. But if you're buying an under construction property, a GST rate of 5% will be applicable on the base price, which you will have to pay either on the completion of the property or when you occupy the house, whichever happens earlier. And then there's also the risk of possession being delayed, which is more common than you can imagine. This might result in higher payout for you.
Always check for something called an escalation clause before signing your agreement. This gives the builder the right to charge you some extra amounts if certain conditions are met. Now, if these conditions are left vague, it can cause a huge problem for you in the future. If there are any conflicts relating to delays or costs, then RERA is the right body which resolves these issues. However, one very important point to note is that RERA does not cover ready-to-move-in flats. Only issues which are within under construction flats can be administered or resolved by RERA. As per the laws, if the builder delays possession due, he can be fined with a penalty of up to 10% of the base price, or he can also be imprisoned for up to 3 years. Also, if you as a buyer are defaulting in payments to the builder, then you also can be fined a 10% monetary penalty amount. You can check the buying guide linked below for more information on RERA and also the steps you can follow to raise a complaint with them. However, I would advise you to not completely rely on this. The best way is to ensure that you're doing all your proper due diligence checks to foolproof your purchase.
So I went through the document checklist that included the mother deed, the sale agreement, which is between the owner and the constructor of this particular property. And of course, in Bangalore, there is something called as Kata, wherein they say you have two types of Kata, A Kata and B Kata. And of course, people prefer buying flats which has A Kata and of course the encumbrance certificate.
If you're purchasing resale flats, make sure that the previous owner has no pending dues in terms of society charges, maintenance charges, electricity bills, or any other such charges related to the property. This problem can be purely eliminated by you insisting the previous owner to give you a non-encumbrance certificate along with the other documents, which will give you assurance that there are no such pending dues on the property you're purchasing.
Whether you decide to buy a ready-to-move-in house or an under construction property, it's always better to go for an A-class builder. Even though they might charge you a slight premium, but the extra cost is worth their proven track record and the quality they provide. I also bought this ready-to-move-in house around 6 months back.
We were actually staying in the same society as a tenant. If you're living there in a society, you know what are the pros and cons and accordingly you can take a call. Society living में एक ये benefit होता है that you have similar age group के बहुत सारे बच्चे मिल जाते हैं. बहुत सारे कई classes होते हैं, बहुत सारे swimming classes, tennis, then karate. There's so many options which you can do. Especially आपकी safety एक बहुत major concern होता है. तो बच्चा is safe. We did look for around 8 houses in the same society and outside as well. And finally we ended up buying this flat.
And from my experience, I'm telling you that when you visit a resale flat, you should always check the age of the property and then compare the prices with the general real estate prices in that area or society in particular. A lot of times owners end up quoting a much higher price. Why is that? Because of their emotional attachment to that house.
This particular flat which I've got, it costed me around 48 lakhs plus 1.5 lakh of registration fee. So that was well within 50 lakhs. I was living here for about 3.5 years, so I kind of knew how this flat was. So I did have one of my friends to come in to inspect the flat and let me know how good the flat is. So this apartment, of course, was 15-year-old apartment, but it's very strongly built, because what happened is when I renovated the flat, what I understood from my friend who helped me in renovating is when they hit any particular nail, the nail doesn't go through that easily inside the walls.
When buying a completed property, resale or new, quality checks become excessively easy. You're not just making assumptions based on the quality of the plans or raw materials, but you can judge the quality based on the actual finished product in front of you.
Make sure you check every single thing, from the walls and tiles to plumbing and wiring, before finalizing a house, especially in case of resale. If you don't want to check everything by yourself, you can also hire professional services to do these checks for you.
And I had spent close to about 5 lakhs for me to renovate this, because this is a 15-year-old flat. To buy a new flat which would cost me about 75 to 80 lakh, why not I use this opportunity, because this flat suited all my needs, and all that I needed was just to have a little bit of renovation done, and that's what I went ahead with as well.
So basically, in most cases, ready to move in is the best option. It's convenient and better decision financially. Now, which are the cases where under construction becomes the better option?
The first, as we already discussed before, is that if you're very particular about minute details of the house and you want to customize it, or if your financial capacity is less, an under construction property will give you some time to plan your finances until you get possession of that property.
In any case, going for a good builder is extremely important. Another thing to consider is at what stage of construction you are buying it at. Ideally, you don't want to buy a house in a building that has just begun construction, even though it will be a little bit cheaper. If it is in second or third stage of construction, you will get to see the progress and also understand whether the work is happening on time or there could be delays.
All that my dad used to say is invest in assets which would appreciate over time. Is going to be a good asset for me, not just for me, but also for my next upcoming generation.
We hope this video helps you zero in on the perfect home for you and your family.
And if you're planning to buy a house in Bangalore, here is another video that might be helpful.